Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Robin. Dear friends, greetings. Assalamu alaikum. It's great to be here. As always, or not quite as always, UPF has gone for the quality of the audience rather than the quantity of it. But I realise that the weather has had something part to play in that as well. As Robin said, I mean, my theme for the next few minutes is how can Commonwealth nations prevent radicalisation? I don't know how many of you watched television last night and saw a documentary about a civilised young man from Derby who came, was born here. His father was first-generation immigrant from Pakistan. He set up business in Derby and was so successful that he became known as Mr. Kebab King of Derby. With the business prospering, he was able to send his son partly to a public school, a fee-paying school, and when that son won a scholarship to a London university, the whole family were extremely proud. Then something happened. That son was one of the 4 who killed 52 people in London in 2005 and injured more than 700 others. What went wrong? A civilised young man, respected in the community, with all the prospects ahead of him, with the prospect of a university degree, talent, suddenly turned completely rogue. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what turned a respectable young man into a suicide bomber? So many of those who commit atrocities in the name of Allah believe that they are doing God's will and that they will be rewarded in the afterlife. They turn out very often to be British citizens who thereby have taken an oath of allegiance to this country and who surprise their neighbours and often their closest families, who have a very different memory of them from what the rest of the world remembers about them. They have been radicalised, some might say brainwashed, into undertaking these acts. Can that be stopped? Can they be identified at an early stage and prevented from going on to commit such acts? Can that degree of necessary intrusion and possibly a special monitoring of certain types of personality be done in a relatively free society without risk of causing suffering, shame and ostracism to those who are innocent alongside the guilty? That is the big question, alongside how far do you allow offensive remarks to be made in public being compatible with freedom of speech. So what is radicalisation? And what can the Commonwealth do about it? Well, faced with violent extremism, the Commonwealth Secretariat hosted a panel discussion of experts on the 2nd of December 2015, which examined the role of formal and informal education and drew from the perspectives of health workers and other experts. The Commonwealth Secretariat Health and Education Unit seeks to stimulate a productive dialogue which can be built on to support member countries in countering violent extremism and radicalisation through multi-sector approaches based on the Secretariat's Civil Paths to Peace model. This model played a central role in talks at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2015, in which the ministers' communique condemned violent extremism, acknowledging the serious threat this presents globally, and encouraging the implementation of this report's recommendations. The role of education was also specifically highlighted as having the ability to address the conditions conducive to grievances and alienation which can contribute to radicalisation. The dictionary definition of radicalisation is the action or process of causing someone to adopt radical positions on political or social issues. There is, of course, nothing inherently wrong with that. we have experienced radical thinkers and debaters in our politics and daily lives since the beginning of time. The extremism, however, which turns strongly held opinions into a deleterious impact on parts or all of the population, is when the holder of those views sees fit to visit violence and killing on others. This is when the perpetrator has gone beyond the promulgation of views, however offensive, yet articulated in a society which tolerates a high level of freedom of speech, into a dark realm of killing those who do not share those views. It is perhaps one of the greatest sadnesses, and what for many makes such actions so incomprehensible, is that when they are alone in the name, when they are done in the name of a particular religion, however perverted an interpretation that may be, the perpetrators are careless that many adherents of the same religion are themselves indiscriminate victims. As the Commonwealth indicates, governments must go beyond traditional approaches to security to cultivate respect and understanding between people. The Secretariat adds value to this agenda by providing a comprehensive policy approach to address this complex and challenging issue. A multi-sector policy approach engages all different sectors to cooperate and work collaboratively towards a combined effort to counter radicalisation and violent extremism. This approach engages the Commonwealth's ability to act as a forum for dialogue and consensus building across borders, to foster and strengthen inclusive initiatives and cultivate mutual understanding. This is crucially important to tackling the underlying mechanisms influencing violent extremism and moving away from the compartmentalising of individuals at risk and engaged in radicalisation. In 2017, the Commonwealth produced a paper entitled Supporting Families in Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism. It makes the obvious point that when someone becomes radicalised and behaves in an extreme way, this not only affects the person, but also their family, friends, wider social circle and society. Families, youngsters and children are confronted with recruitment by terrorist or violent extremist groups every day. Today's reality is one in which radicalisation is not uncommon as a phenomenon. For vulnerable individuals and their social environment, current prevention challenges are detecting those who are at risk of radicalisation, being able to get into contact with them and support them and their families in a change of direction, and supporting both the individual and their family during the disengagement process. Why families? Well, families are at the core of any individual's resilience. Family members should be seen as partners. The objective should be to engage, build trust, and form relationships over a longer period of time. There should be a systematic approach to the family, including understanding the family dynamics and wider social environment and community. Transparency towards the family is crucial to maintain a relationship. Although police involvement is necessary at times, the coordination and cooperation between them and family is of importance. The paper sets out 8 practical steps. First, identifying a potential case of radicalisation within the family, then discussing a course of action in a multi-agency setting, getting in contact with the family, making an assessment of risks and needs, lessons and approaches to working with children, keeping track of progress and communication, preparing to disengage from the family, and building and developing family support capacity. Back in 2015, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, to which I referred, determined to set up a dedicated Commonwealth Countering Violent Extremism unit, requiring strong action and cooperation. The role of education in combating alienation and grievance was acknowledged. A multi-sector approach is required. Mutual respect and understanding is required. Whereas in the old order, each country learned of its history from its own proponents, and of course, history is very much who writes it, in the new multicultural, multi-ethnic world, with so many now living outside their country of origin through extensive migration, these histories finally come together. We should remember that the history of the East India Company, written from a British perspective for children in the UK in the 19th and 20th centuries, is a very different idea from that of those who were directly affected by it, the Bengali children and others in their own land which had been invaded. Their own story must now be told alongside the colonialism of Britain. Those histories must somehow be reconciled in a non-confrontational way, seeking the disinterested truth wherever possible. With so many shared values, institutions, language and other attributes, the Commonwealth is in an ideal position to take forward the struggle against violent extremism. I'm delighted that they have taken such a lead over the last few years. At a session organised by UPF last year on the 28th of June on local government and the prevention of radicalisation, I developed a theme that we need to bring localism to bear rather than top-down government schemes which seem to indicate that one size fits all. It is local people, starting with families, but also in clubs and gyms and other social venues, who can notice a change in personality, who can see someone becoming introverted or obsessed with a particular narrative or dogma, and hopefully investigate that within the context of the individual's life. It is then that there needs to be a proper dialogue about what may be causing alienation. Islam clearly has a major role to play in local imams accentuating the peaceful nature of the religion and the abhorrence of violence, as well as the haram nature of taking a life, including one's own. To kill one is tantamount to killing all. The road to the eradication of violent extremism is long and tortuous. It requires perseverance and experimentation of what works and what does not. Ultimately, however, perhaps while acknowledging that there will always be deeply disturbed people who, for a variety of reasons, wish harm to their fellow travellers, it is building a greater sense of community and taking care for others that will help to extinguish it. We need a coordinated approach. YouTube, recently in the news, video, transnational digital, these all need to be tackled. And that central government and international governance has its part to play. But ultimately, it is our own local society, our own community, our own families who will play the greater part. Thank you very much.